All sorts of people are coming by Occupy Wall Street here in New York today, and this is day of labor and community groups hosting an enormous rally. Well, they think it'll be enormous. We're recording a few hours in advance of the rally itself. And meeting up with the people who are coming by here is quite an experience. With me now is Professor Todd Gitlin, a historian of social movements, among other things, a watcher of politics in America. Todd, help us put this into political context. Does it remind you of anything? Does it have any echoes here in the Occupy Wall Street Park?
As Leo Tolstoy would have said, all unhappy social movements are different. This has echoes of basically the anarchist spirit that came out of the New Left and was the operative principle of the movement against nuclear reactors in the early 1970s, the anti-globalization movement, some feminist activity. The idea is horizontal organization, anti-hierarchical, fairly indiscriminately anti-authoritarian, meaning also against your own authorities, your own leaders, your own organizations. And there's, obviously it represents, this sort of event represents a certain kind of cultural statement. It says, we're outsiders, we like being outsiders, we think it's all corrupt and monstrous out there, and we want to do our thing.
But that's an interesting point that you're making, in that certainly the anti-nuclear movement, you've got to say, and I think people would agree, it's been one of the most effective global movements we've had. In terms of nuclear freeze and all the rest, that grew out of this kind of anarchism?
Oh, for sure. But you see, that was easy because there was only one target. And it was very clear, what's your program for nuclear power? Stop it. End story. That didn't require, it required allies, but didn't require a complicated coalition. It just requires stopping one industry. On whom are you making the demand? I mean, there's a cynical way of saying to these people, well, okay, what do you people want? But I think it's a legitimate question if what you want is to do more than occupy a square in Wall Street, Manhattan for a period of time. Then you have to talk about leverage and strategy and tactics and allies and enemies and programs and all that. It gets difficult. But yes, you're right. The anti-nuclear movement, the anti-nuclear reactor movement was a huge success.
I was actually thinking of the anti-nuclear weapons movement. We still have the reactors.
Oh, you're thinking of the nuclear freeze. Well, actually, I would agree that was a big success, although in an odd way, because it actually had an effect on Reagan. But that's another story.
The question of organization, though, I mean, what I'm hearing here and what I've watched over the last few weeks is that there is a process, that there is a decision-making system. It just takes a while. And that the consensus decisions that are arrived at are really, well, for the most part at least of what I've seen, agreed to by everyone and kind of adhered to by all.
I've heard similar things from other people who have also spent time down here. I don't think there's any doubt that the people who are here are sincere and committed to what they call horizontal democracy. It's not just it's not a mask for some Stalinist boogeyman. The question that they have to face is then, well, how do you continue this? Because movements are like capital. They grow or die. And so it's not sufficient to be able to administer one square block and make some decisions about a few demonstrations. Where does the leverage come from? Who are your friends? How do you mobilize your friends? What do you expect of your friends to do, those who are not in this park, etc. A million questions that are extremely difficult. But I agree with you. One of the stupidities in conventional media coverage of movements is that they don't understand that movements are alive. They're organisms, and they grow and learn. This is the proverbial learning curve is at work, and so it's good to know that learning can take place.
seems to me that the country is doing a lot of learning right now, learning about just how much dissatisfaction there is. And in a sense, a kind of an alarm is being sounded here at a critical moment around the beginning of an election campaign, calling, I think, for politics that goes beyond the partisan to a much bigger conversation about our country, our society, our economy. If you were going to throw out a few questions that you think we should be grappling with this election year, what would they be?
In 30 seconds? That's a tall order. It's a perfectly dandy question. I think the priority has to be on imagining a world. I mean, I won't give you my laundry list of pet demands and issues. I think that at the core of it is the question of what is the future of an America that cannot return to the days of being the dominant manufacturing power. A world in which people are not going to expect to go to work on that floor of that building and then work their way up by the time they retire, but jobs are not what they were, and the meaning of life doesn't come from jobs as it did. And it's, in other words, a big rethink about what a grown-up 21st century economy looks like. We are so far from having that conversation. We have one major political party that refuses. Every one of the candidates raised their hands in the Republican debate, and they said, would you be willing to accept $1 of tax increase for every $10 of budget cuts? And every single one of them raised their hands and said, no, we are absolutely stuck in granite. We are frozen. Okay, that's one and that same political party doesn't think there are environmental catastrophes looming, and so on. So there's a lot to be cleared out. If I'm optimistic, or at least hopeful, it is because I think it's evident to many people, including people who would not call themselves left-wing, that we landed in this box because the plutocracy has been encroaching upon the rest of the life of America for decades. And, it didn't just happen overnight that 1%, the top 1%, collected 40% of the wealth. That doesn't get rolled back overnight. It took those guys a lot of time to get to that leverage, and this is the work of a lifetime. Now, if you think one demonstration, like one political campaign, is going to clear the air, then you're not serious.
But maybe if we stay here a really long time and grow to every city in the States and the world too, something could change.
Well, again, it's a question of what to do when the frost comes, what to do when the concrete is not so comfortable.
By then, these folks will have figured it out, Todd. Optimism.
Well, bless them.
Todd Gitlin, thanks so much for joining. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
You're watching Free Speech TV's live coverage of Occupy Wall Street.